He's got a calf that just hasn't come up, bump on the calf, tad sore Wednesday, probably happened Wednesday at training, and just at his age, we know what the calves can do and how long they can be out, so let's get it right. Well, yes. Well, I don't know the word's excited, but it's good to get a player in that we need into our system, that eventually we want to be able to... I don't think too many sides can say we're going to have everyone available, but if we have everyone available and we get our structures right, then what we get is a Jared Waite type player, him or someone that can put some heat on that forward line through the air, and we know how quick he's on the ground. So yeah, it's a real... I'm not going to call it a bonus either, but it's what we want. We've been now going through a pre-season without that sort of structure. We enter into round 6, coming into something that gives us a little bit more scope on our forward line. No, give him an extra week, not an extra week in the VFL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Extra week to
get right.
You've obviously seen enough.
Well, I just don't see... Look, and this is... It doesn't matter who we were playing or whatever the case may be. 1 week, a player of that type of touch, who's an experienced player, if it was a young player, you'd go, look, let's get some form before we play. A player that's been around for a long, long time, knows his body, knows how to play, knows what we want. He's had the additional week of training, then he's had the game. There's no sense in leaving him back in the VFL. Well, he's a marking player. He's also a good ground player. He'll draw a good opponent. And Sean's we've been pretty harsh on Sean. I think that we've underestimated the impact of a fairly substantial operation to remove his appendix. He was back after a week, and that's a pretty big effort for a start off. He gave us an enormous amount that week, and I reckon it may have had a bit of a toll on him. So his performances over the last week haven't been what we expect, but he's a lot better in himself at the moment. His training's been very good, and we half suspect that impact of that operation would have had a detriment effect, probably a drawing out effect on him, where the anaesthetic was still in his system, and as good as he was and as brave as he was, we now think that it's right out, and hopefully we can get some him playing well on the ruck and on the forward line. Yeah, as I said to the boys before, I think for every new player that enters into the competition, there's a good story. And for a young bloke that was chosen by the club, was delisted, it's a big effort to go from your home state somewhere else and start again, and he did that in South Australia and did very, very well. And then to say to him, look, we will draft you, but it will be through the rookie list. And him to say, I'm ready. Because the way he was going in South Australia he was a very talented player playing in a smaller competition admittedly, but had a good name and could have stayed over there for a number of years. And to take the punt to come back, no guarantees, and take up where he left off and play some pretty good football. In fact, played very good football for us. So he will step into that role that Andrew Carazzo has vacated, and it gives him something to get his teeth into. So it's a very good story. He will when he plays, that's right. No, not this week. Not at all. It wouldn't have made any difference, really, because we got on very well. We think pretty similarly as far as the way football is played and how people should be put into the game. It's just another little challenge. He probably knows practically what sort of game structure I've got, and I know his. So, but that's predictability is one aspect. It's stopping the predictability is the other. We coach to win. We coach to get it right. Well, you could say soft. I don't think there's any soft games for a start off. I think most games are won and lost by attitude, and that's the way we're treating it. Oh, absolutely. I've stood in here pre-match today and said, okay, this is the way we think it'll turn out. But we don't pick their side. And what they do with their team is going to be on 340 tomorrow, or whatever it is, 320. will give us an idea what they're going to run in the race and look like. Because we really, you're right, when you make that many changes, and some of them are forced, we know their forward line for a start off is structurally different. So that presents us with a challenge on their back half. And the mids will be without Jamar. So how does Spencer go around? And our information was that he's an 80% ruckman or 75% ruckman, then forward, and he's only been held out by a very, very good player, and his form has been excellent. So how does he ruck? And I've spoken to our ruckman about him, and they don't know a lot about him. So we're digging through the footage to get some sound, I guess, form on him. It's progressing. It's got a term to run, so it'll run that term. Oh well, we'll just have to wait and see on that one. But he's training well. It's just a matter of, I guess, dotting the I's and making sure the T's are across at the right time and bringing him in at the right time. You can't rush soreness, and you can't rush slight strains. You've got to be very, very careful that a slight strain doesn't become something major, and they're very aware of it. Well, I watched the game last night. I watched Collingwood get 100 plus. Was it 100 plus marks? And then you look at St Kilda not far off. And we are low. I'm not too sure we use the ball the same way. I suspect that our game is different structurally. I think that also you've got to be able to play the game of possession if that's the game you want to play. So you've got to be very careful about drawing a conclusion of does it serve you well or doesn't it serve you well. We would rather have a few more marks, but that doesn't make it a great deal of difference to our game structure. And the few more marks I'm talking about are basically in the forward line, taking them and kicking goals from them. But around the ground, I think we move the ball as well as we can with our personnel. So therefore, it may not look like a lot of numbers in the marking, but it really does serve us well with the way we operate. We're probably a longer kicking side than most. When you're a longer kicking side, the chances of marking the football are less compared to the 25-metre chips and that sort of stuff. So, and we're not that sort of team. So we can rake them up. Does it serve us any better? Probably not. The way we're going at the moment, I'm quite happy. But I'd still rather take a few more inside front 50. Okay. Can it work? All things can work. You can make anything work because you have to. You have to make, whatever the rules are, you make them work. Is it practical? We've got a unique game of football. Our game is very, very unique. It's built a lot on endurance. It's built on power. So we have so straight away you've got a contrast. It's built on 22 plus weeks with 18 players and not a lot of players replace them on a match day. You get your 100 odd rotations, but nonetheless you still only got 4 on the bench, 3 and 1. So we are very, very unique. And what we've got to do is get the best people to look at that and say, well, which is the best methodology of getting them into a state where they can play the full year without compromising their safety or the prospect of injury. Now, those dates seem okay when we all talk about how many weeks do you need to get fit, but I think what you give, you've got to start to take. And the take is that a pre-season program is automatically, I think, subject to, or have to be subject to change. You can't start later and expect to have your NAB Cup series start in mid-February, because that would be madness. It's already hard. We play at a very, very odd time. We play during it's okay now, we're all feeling cold, but a lot of games are played mid-afternoon in February. Now, if you haven't done a lead-up, you're exposing players to all sorts of problems. If you have late night games, okay, but really, by starting mid-February with December and January starting times, you really run the risk of, I think you run a serious risk of fatigue, early fatigue injuries, and we don't want that. And from fatigue injuries, we tend to have a lot of, because of the nature of the game, we have knees and ankles and quaddies and hammies and that sort of stuff. So we can cope with it, but I think something's got to give the other end. It's okay to have a longer season, but I think it should start later. You can't be put under pressure to be starting games in February. So yes, December gives you January, gives you February, and then you can ease into March, but certainly no February games. So that's the way I take it. And what do players do between October and that starting period? I'd like to think that in our case, because I'm associated with La Trobe, I'd be pushing strongly for players to take up some form of course, some sort of sporting course, or some sort of course away from football, so that they're actually, when their football career finishes, they've actually got something under their belt, because that short period doesn't allow them a lot of study time at the moment. But if it's extended, what do they do with their time? We've got to be careful about that time. There is a hint that, everything's pushed out and we take away that saturation point where it's well spread, but I'm not 100% sure that is still the right way to go. So what you give, you've got to pull. If you give something, you've got to get something back, and we've got to have players that are still physically looking after themselves. Testings and all sorts of testings. And I won't go into that. But there's going to be all sorts of testings.